You know how it can be really hard to think about or plan for the future in the midst of all that you're doing on a daily basis? Listen, I'm incredibly excited because today's conversation with Dan Slagle is one where we're going to talk about strategic planning, but also kind of how it fits together with some tactical meetings and some other conversations. I think it's going to be a great service to you as you come along this leadership journey with us. Thanks so much for joining the History Makers Leadership Podcast. Well, Dan, I'm real thankful to be able to sit here with you again, brother, to think through some things. There's a season in every leader's life and in every organization's life where they have to start this process of strategic planning, strategic thinking, trying to look at where they are, where they want to go, and the rest. I'd love to just kind of spend some time breaking that down together, thinking through that. And I guess first, I'd just ask at the high level, when should we be doing that? Like, what are some of the markers in the life cycle of an organization or in the life cycle of a leader's leadership that you go, hey, these are some markers that this is maybe a good point or a good season for starting and initiating some of that strategic thinking and planning. And what does that look like maybe in your own life and in your own leadership context?
Right. Yeah. Well, the simple answer is to some degree all the time. Part of the job of the leader is being aware of what is happening in the organization with your followers, how well you are achieving objectives, all of those kinds of things. But then, of course, there are those times when it's really devoted special time to just honing in on that, focusing on that. I think certainly something like it should happen at least on an annual basis.
Yeah.
But then I think for the Spirit-led leader, we need to be sensitive to kairos moments. Kairos, the Greek term that references time, but not watch ticking time, but rather a particular season, a time when God is moving and the Spirit is at work. And I think if a leader is in touch with the Holy Spirit and purposeful in their prayer life, paying attention to what's happening in the organization, there will be an intuition that, this is probably a time we need to pull off to the side of the road, look under the hood, and see what's going on.
Man, here. That's such a good, it's such a good reminder, because I think even as I think about strategic planning, my first intuition actually is to say, hey, what am I seeing going on that we need to be prepared to respond to? What changes am I seeing in the market, for lack of a better phrase? How can we uniquely adapt? But then also, where are we in the arc of history, right? Where are we in these larger kind of narratives, and how do we prepare and respond? Like when I'm thinking, I am very much, thinking from that perspective of, okay, I'm constantly trying to take in information, constantly trying to learn the context that I'm leading in, or the context that our organization's operating in, but figuring out how to move from that to knowing those kairos moments. Those, hey, this is that appointed time, and to really live in that space to remember, hey, this is a spiritual endeavor where it begins in a heart of submission, saying, okay, Lord, what are you, I'm seeing these signs, I'm seeing these notes, what are you trying to kind of download or kind of speak into the midst of that?
I think too, there are also some very practical indicators that it's time to do that. In your case, assuming the mantle of leadership, definitely, you want to begin with an awareness of the lay of the land, where the organization is, where it needs to go, where you want it to go, all of those kinds of things. But things happen in the life of an organization. An unexpected opportunity comes along.
Yeah, there you go.
that no one had anticipated,
Mm-hmm.
but it's right in line with our mission and our vision.
Mm-hmm.
We just can't pass it up, but it's going to mean we've got to pull off to the side of the road and,
Right.
and think about it. A large unexpected gift comes along. What are we going to do with these resources?
Sure.
Things like that, that just come along that are worthy of extended attention on the part of the leadership.
It reminds me, I was with a group of Christian business leaders in Central Asia, and we're working through the core values, talking about Christian leadership, and at the start of each day we spend this time in devotion, and it was a particular day focused on spiritual disciplines and prayer and silence and solitude, and he just came up to me after we'd kind of gone through the devotion. He was going to have some time for that. He said, "Hey, this is what I've got coming. I've got one contract that's sitting in front of me. It was completely unexpected, but this is the opportunity. For lack of a better phrase, it's $500,000. That's me putting that's all the cattle in the pen, right? Like that. Yeah. That's me going all the way." He said that may be a small contract for businesses, but for us, this is everything.
Yeah, sure.
I just need to seek the Lord to know if this is the right strategic shift, right? He was in manufacturing, so basically he's going to look, all of my lines are going to be just making this one thing for the next X amount of time, and that's a strategic shift. And so it's a good thing to note that, sometimes those strategic thinking conversations happen as a response to opportunity in a positive direction, or crisis in a negative.
About 20 years ago, I became the missions pastor at Faithbridge Church. Mm-hmm. And we had a decent operating budget, but plenty of room for growth. Sure. And then lo and behold, one Sunday, a gentleman walks up to me and tells me he wants to give $1 million to missions at Faithbridge. Yeah. Well, my first thought was, hallelujah.
Yeah, praise God.
And let's take that and run with it. I made the quote unquote mistake of sharing this great news with my senior pastor, who immediately took the ball and began to run with it. Mm. He had the larger vision of the needs of the whole church.
Yeah.
And what $1 million could mean for the organization as a whole, and reminded me, Faithbridge is missional.
Yeah.
And so any gift coming our way is a gift to missions. Well, for 10 minutes I pouted. I could see these dollars slipping through my hands. But there's an example of a time when we pulled aside, like, wow, this has come our way.
Yeah.
What is going to be the wisest, most productive way to use this for the organization as a whole?
As a whole, yeah. Absolutely. And and I think it's I think that kind of exercise is just so valuable, and having the kind of relationship that can sustain that kind of opportunity to say, hey, look, you and your senior pastor had enough relational capital to navigate that, to go, hey, let me help you see what all of this looks like, and the blessing that is, and that's where, again, as a leader in an organization, we want to be men and women who are faithful to build and establish relationships, so that when that strategic thinking and planning process comes, we can really wrestle, right? We can really kind of navigate those things. Everybody's got their kind of lane within an organization that they're passionate about driving at, and that's good. And we want to help everyone to recognize that responsibility and role, and connect into the larger piece and vision. So practically, then, all right. So I'm walking faithfully with the Lord, intimate relationship with God, so that I can hear those kairos moments, those moments where He's saying, "Hey, look, let me download, let me walk with you." I'm constantly kind of learning and taking in data, right? Observation, insight from my external realities, right, the market, and my internal realities, our operations and our staff and the rest. Practically, again, you mentioned this idea of maybe, at the very least, probably annually sitting down and really, really going through this. How do you differentiate that from just kind of a typical meeting? We talked about in some of your experience, you've seen these, I think you used the phrase tactical meetings and strategic meetings. What does some of that look like? How did you guys, in some of your experience, balance having those meetings, making it so it doesn't just become kind of a messy plate worth of just stuff all slopped out there, and actually kind of, hey, we're able to talk strategically and make some kind of meaningful progress down that.
Sure.
And the conversation itself is meaningful in progress, but yeah.
So one of the things that I appreciated about our staff meetings at FaithBridge was the staff set the agenda. There was no preconceived agenda brought to the table. This is what we're going to talk about. Rather, the first thing we did when we gathered was, okay, let's start writing on the whiteboard. What do we need to talk about today? And everybody's throwing out this, and this. Well, early on, of course, everything is out there, and we're talking about everything. But some issues on a given day would predominate.
Yeah,
it just take over.
Yeah,
and I don't know exactly who came up with the idea, but one day, Ken, our senior pastor, said, okay, we're going to change the way we do this. Our regular weekly meetings are going to be our tactical meetings, where we deal with the matters that are taking place on an ongoing basis. This coming Sunday, what do we need to be ready for? What are some fires we need to put out today? Those kinds of things that need to be addressed just regularly in the course of church work.
Yeah.
In addition to that, when needed, we are going to have what we call strategic meetings, where we take one issue, one big issue that either regularly demands attention, like Christmas or Easter, or something that pops up, a grand opportunity.
Yeah.
That we've really got to put our heads together and think about. Is this a direction we want to go?
$1 million influx.
Yeah,
like
something
how are we
like
going on this? Yeah.
And that will be the sole item of the agenda. And typically on strategic days, you blocked off the whole day. You knew you were going to be in there looking at this thing from every single direction, up and down, backwards and forwards, until you had arrived at some sort of conclusion about the issue. When we would enter into our regular tactical meetings, the senior pastor, Ken, was sort of the arbiter as to, okay, yes, that's definitely a tactical issue. Let's put that on the... I think that's worthy of a strategic. And we would write it down.
Okay.
So that we didn't forget.
Yeah.
That way nobody was blown off,
You was getting added in one spot or the other.
That's right.
Okay.
And it was saved until the next strategic that came along. But that improved the efficiency of our staff meetings tremendously. Just knowing that, okay, we are not going to be going down these rabbit trails, which needed to be traveled, but then never got around to talking about what needed to happen this Sunday or what have you. So yeah.
So I'm hearing a couple of different elements here that I think are really great. The first is you talk about a staff meeting, and the phrase that came to mind was it was the staff's meeting, right?
Right.
It was given direction and form and function. I think sometimes it can be easy to look at a staff meeting and it's really just an information transfer. It's just trying yet again to make sure everybody's on the same page and knows things. But again, you want to be strategically solving problems. You want to be navigating that, and that kind of problem solving sits in a regular place, and there's those tactical problem solving conversations where hey, these are regular issues, regular things coming up, and then basically, it sounds like in this case, you've got an operations leader saying, "Hey, that's strategic. Like that, I can foresee that this is going to have more that needs and deserves that dedicated time and attention. We're going to set this over here." Now, those strategic conversations. I mean, who all were you including in that conversation? I mean, surely it wasn't like, "Hey, everybody on staff, you come here," or was it, "Hey, we recognize in our staff that there are ideators and discerners, and we're gonna mobilize them. There are process and systems people. They like how did that element of the process come into play?"
So I should have differentiated at the beginning. When I say our staff had levels.
Okay.
Big church.
Okay.
4,000 in attendance.
Okay.
And so departments.
Sure.
And the department heads made up what we call the lead team.
Okay.
And that is the staff that I'm referring to.
That lead team is the one having. Gotcha.
Exactly. And that would typically be around 12 of us, depending on the season. Occasionally, if the strategic warranted the addition of someone else, they would be invited, either because of their experience or how it is going to impact them specifically. But typically it was the lead team who would do that. Yeah.
Okay. Helpful. Did you guys ever, as you function in that space, in what ways, maybe you did or maybe you thought would be ideal, were you engaging next generation leaders in that, right? I mean, heaven forbid, the first time you're doing some real heavy strategic thinking like that is when you get one of those seats, right? You want to be invited into that. How do you help, or how did you guys navigate some of that, trying to say, hey, you haven't historically had a seat in this part of the conversation, but I want to invite you in. I want you to begin practicing this because I see potential in you. What did that look like for you guys?
Well, at FaithBridge, we were blessed to have very low turnover.
Wow.
Yeah. People would typically come and stay on the staff I was on staff there for over 20 years.
Wow. Yeah.
And particularly as a Methodist pastor, subject to the appointment system, that was really
that's really special.
Rare. Thankful for it. But in our situation, we threw people in the deep end of the pool. We're here. You're invited to be a part of this because we believe you have something to contribute.
Yeah.
We don't need necessarily to hold your hand. You jump in here with us and learn by observing, by listening. And it didn't take long for new staff members, new lead team members, to size up who is who has this the ability to think analytically, who is thinking more pastorally, who's thinking about the money that's involved. Those things become apparent pretty quickly. Yeah.
That's kind of any team dynamic. You're starting to kind of navigate those pieces together. Okay, so you talk about these strategic meetings, these strategic plannings. Was this the same context where you guys, or let me phrase it this way. When you sit there and you go, hey, we're going to engage in a new 3-year capital campaign, right? 4,000 people, praise God, that's a huge congregation. At some point, it wasn't that large. And at some point, it was, 500 that needed it needed a sanctuary that could fit, 2,000. What did those particular meetings look like? Was there any differentiation there, or was it just, hey, every year we're kind of looking out and saying we're not going to try and project out 10 years because Lord knows there's too many changes there. But also, if you only project out 1 year, then it's hard to do those kind of medium arc length projects.
Right.
How did you guys navigate some of that?
So our movement toward the strategic and tactical model was more evolutionary than revolutionary. We just realized along the way we had been doing things wasn't working, or at least it wasn't the most productive.
Yeah. Okay.
And, when you look around the table and people's eyes are getting glazed and they're looking at their watches, you read the body language and you say, okay.
Here's where we are.
Yeah. We need to find something different there.
Yeah.
At Faith Bridge, we were fortunate to have a senior pastor whose greatest gift was visionary leadership, always thinking about what is coming down the pike. Therefore, the expectation was that each member of the lead team would be doing the same in their individual departments.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And so when we had these strategics, they were never a surprise to anyone.
Yeah.
I can't recall a time when somebody thought, "Oh, wow, I didn't know we'd be talking about this." We were very much in touch with one another, and Ken, our senior pastor, was good about communicating with us about where he felt like things needed to go, and where he saw things going. He would regularly pull aside for private retreats to accomplish one of two things: either sermon planning for 6 months ahead and who the given preacher would be on a given Sunday, or a season to just think about Faith Bridge and, okay, what's happening in Faith Bridge and how is this community changing, or whatever factors are involved in church life.
Okay.
And he would, unlike the tacticals where the staff set the agenda, he would be the agenda setter for the strategics. Because as the leader, he took on the responsibility of thinking about the larger picture of the church.
Yeah.
Going back to the $1 million, I'm only thinking about $1 million for what I want to do in missions.
Right.
As the senior pastor, he was thinking about the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that was the strength that he brought to the table there.
Man, that's so good. I think of a counter example to that, where like that was done poorly. I served with a school for a number of years, and that school had been attached to a small church. Okay, and really, right, when you go back to the formation of everything, it was a couple of homeschooling parents at that church who said, "Hey, you're good at science, I'm good at English. Let's just swap kids here for that, and we'll be able to help our kids better than if we tried to do it alone." And that turned into, "Hey, let's actually do this. Let's just have it as a school, and we'll fast forward, that was in the late 80s. Fast forward to the early 2000s and the early 2010s, and what do you have? Well, you've actually got a church that has now dwindled in size, right, from a relatively large and influential church to 40, 50 members, right? And now a school that has 350 students, right? So
tail wagging the dog.
Exactly, right? What had been the church building and church budget became the school building and school budget, and now the school wasn't paying the church for the use; it was the church paying the school for the use, and it became this big, very complicated mess.
Sounds like
it was. But I say that only to say, yeah, that's if suddenly there had been that kind of influx in this branch, and it begins to be a tree, it will uproot the whole tree and tip it over. Right. You need that balance of the whole entity, and that's where again, strategic thinking, planning from the leader in the midst of that can be so important.
Yes.
So I'm going to summarize some of the notes I'm taking away here, Dan, as I'm thinking about this for myself, as I'm thinking about on behalf of the leaders listening in. I'm going to initiate the process of strategic thinking and planning in my regular life, bringing in information, observing, listening, making sure that I have the space and bandwidth to have a lay of the land, right? Because if I'm not doing that, well, then no one is, right? As the leader in the organization, that's my responsibility to serve for the team. So I'm gonna do that. I'm also gonna be spiritually walking in such a way that I can see those Kairos moments. I can hear the Lord saying, "Hey, this is a moment. Let's pull over. Let's check under the hood. Let's navigate this or this." I'm gonna have a delineation between, hey, let's navigate individual issues and those kinds of decisions, and and identify either in myself or someone in the executive leadership of the organization to say, you help us find this is worthy of a deeper conversation. It requires more strategic thinking together because it's organizationally impactful, not departmentally a thing. And so that's going to help differentiate there. And then we're gonna have an expectation of that senior leadership team to say, look, you're doing these within your disciplines, right?
Right.
I think about it as from even a business perspective. You go, hey, I might be keeping an eye on the market, but you have to, as a marketing, you got to keep best practices of marketing. I can't keep eye on that all the way. I got to keep an eye on the marketplace.
Right.
You keep that over here. If you're my chief, for a tech company and you're my chief technical officer, hey, you've got to step and lead that. In a church, it may be, hey, you're my discipleship pastor. Right. So you've got to keep an eye on what are the best practices we're seeing in helping believers become effective workers in the harvest field. What are some of the methods that people are trying, that they're initiating? And not only have that expectation, but make sure that they have set boundaries and pathways and time to constantly be growing and investing in that. Any other tips for the leaders listening in that you say, hey, as you think about strategic planning, thinking, what would you say to me or to them?
I guess the only other thing I would add is even beyond the regular strategics, there were, in the 20 plus years I was at FaithBridge, there were 2 or 3 occasions where there was a shift in the overall focus of our church. I'll give you a for instance.
Yeah.
One day, Ken came in to our regular meeting and said, I have a concern. Our attendance is great. Our giving is great. How do we know we're making disciples? Our stated mission statement is FaithBridge exists to make more and stronger disciples who make more and stronger disciples.
That's right.
He said, I'm not comfortable with how we measure that.
Yeah.
And so he said, for the next year, we're going to take a deep dive into discipleship and figuring out best practices, how to gauge it, leadership that should be involved. So that was on an even higher level than a quarterly strategic.
Yeah. Okay.
This had to do with the whole organization, the emphases of that whole organization, where we were going to be putting big sums of money, lots of staff energy, those sorts of things. Those should be rare.
Sure.
Sure. If you're clear about who you are and what you're doing, you don't need to be having these seismic shifts
right.
on a regular basis.
Right.
That's why I say in the whole time I was there, maybe 2, 3 at the most. Sure. The one that comes to mind is that discipleship emphasis there.
Well, and such a good reminder, if that isn't clear of where you are, what your mission and vision is, man, you got to make sure that is clear.
For sure.
Like if that's got to be the starting point, and make sure that the whole team knows, hey, this is who we are and this is what we're doing. Okay. Just making sure that's clear. Now let's step forward. So that's good. That's really good, Dan. Well, man, I love having conversations with you. I love your pastoral heart, your thinking, your clarity on this, Dan. It's always an encouragement and a conviction for me. So thank you very much for that.
You bet. Fun for me.
Yeah, brother. Absolutely. Hey, listen, leaders, thank you so much for being a part of this. At the International Leadership Institute, we exist because we want to see the whole world reach with the gospel. And that means that leaders have to be equipped so that all of the believers in the world can become effective workers in the harvest field. Listen, if this is helpful for you, I want to ask, would you do us a kindness? Maybe like, subscribe, share, tell us what's been useful to you, help us to serve you better. You can find some other incredible resources at iliteam.org, and there you'll also see a little bit about the 8 core values of the most effective Christian leaders, a wonderful resource. That's why we're here. Thank you so much for being a part of today's conversation. And Dan, thanks for joining us, man.